My husband forgot to hang up after saying she'll never find out. Then I heard my sister start laughing on the other end. The day I found out I still loved my husband, Marcus, that is the detail people skip when they tell betrayal stories from the outside. They want the moment of discovery to flip a switch. They imagine love vanishing the second proof appears, like a light going out in a room. It does not happen that cleanly. Love stays for a while. It stands there stunned beside you, still holding all the old memories. The first trip, the first inside joke, the first time you fell asleep next to someone and thought this is what safety feels like. That is why betrayal hurts so badly. It does not only break trust, it makes your best memories feel like witnesses who lied. I had spent months trying to be reasonable with Marcus. I told myself every couple had seasons, quiet seasons, busy seasons. Seasons where one person needed more room and the other person needed more reassurance. I had read enough advice and listened to enough friends to know that not every strange silence was a crisis. So when something felt off, I did the mature thing first. I asked gently, I gave space. I believed the explanations that arrived quickly enough to sound rehearsed but softly enough to sound loving. I had called Marcus to ask whether he wanted dinner after my late shift ended early. At the time, I did not know that ordinary change in schedule would become the hinge my life turned on. I remember tiny things from that day with unfair clarity: the weight of my keys in my hand, the way my phone battery was low, the smell of rain on pavement, the thin headache behind my eyes from trying to ignore the feeling that my life had started speaking in whispers. The first thing that bothered me was this: he whispered instead of answering normally, then said he had to go before the call stayed connected. It was not enough to accuse anyone. That was the trap. Betrayal often protects itself by arriving in pieces too small to hold up in court: a smell that should not be there, a name said too quickly, a phone turned over when you enter the room, a story that changes only at the edges. Individually, each thing makes you feel petty for noticing. Together, they build a map. I stood there and felt the old argument begin inside me. One voice said, "Do not be dramatic." Another said, "You have ignored enough." For once, I listened to the second voice. That was how I saw Liana laughing in the background after Marcus said I would never find out. The world did not explode. That almost made it worse. There was no soundtrack, no warning, no merciful blackout. Life kept being life. A refrigerator hummed. A phone buzzed somewhere. Someone breathed in sharply, and I realized it was me. Marcus looked at me with the expression of a person whose lie had been interrupted before it was dressed properly. I had imagined in the abstract way everyone imagines pain, that if I ever caught someone betraying me, I would become fierce immediately. I would say the perfect sentence. I would stand tall. I would make the room understand the size of what had happened. Instead, my first words were stupidly small. "What is this?" Nobody ever has a good answer to that question. Marcus said my name like it was a towel being thrown over a spill. Claire, wait. That one word, wait, told me everything. Not sorry. Not this is not what it looks like. Wait, as if the truth had arrived too early and needed to be rescheduled. I did wait, not because I owed patience, but because some part of me needed to hear the lie try to survive in open air. Marcus and Liana had been meeting during family errands, and my sister had been helping him mock the way I trusted them both at first. The explanation came in fragments: stress, confusion, loneliness, bad timing, a mistake, a misunderstanding. The old vocabulary of people who want the benefits of a choice without the weight of having chosen it. I listened until the words began circling. Then I asked for specifics: dates, names, how long, who knew, what was said about me when I was not in the room. Every specific question made the story uglier. Vague betrayal can still pretend to be fog. Specific betrayal has furniture. It has rooms, times, receipts, inside jokes, and passwords. The thing that made denial impossible was a voicemail recording of the open call, complete with names, dates, and my sister joking about my anniversary gift. I remember looking at it and feeling my body go very quiet, not calm, quiet, like every part of me had stepped back from the edge of something. There are moments when you understand that one more explanation will not help you. You are not confused anymore. You are grieving. Marcus tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. That small step changed the room. Until then, I think we had both been playing roles we knew too well. They were the person who could talk their way through anything. I was the person who wanted love to be repairable if enough patience was applied. When I stepped back, I stopped being available for the old script. "Do not touch me," I said. My voice did not shake. That surprised me. It seemed to surprise them too. The next few minutes were not dramatic enough for what they contained. I asked for my things, my space, my phone, my keys, whatever applied to the mess in front of me. Practical words, survival words. The pain came later. Pain is polite that way sometimes. It waits until you are alone. That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and let my mind replay everything I had missed. Not because I wanted to torture myself, but because the brain tries to rebuild the past after betrayal the way investigators rebuild a crash. When did the tone change? And did I first feel lonely beside someone who claimed to love me? When did I start asking fewer questions because every answer made me feel needy? The answers came slowly, then all at once. There had been the week my messages went unanswered for hours, but social media showed activity. There had been the sudden interest in privacy, the impatience when I asked simple things, the compliments that became rarer than strategic, the way affection returned strongest after I almost named what was wrong. That was the cruel rhythm: distance, doubt, tenderness, silence, over and over until I started mistaking relief for love. The next morning, my phone was full: messages from partner, short, missed calls, a long text that began with, "I know this looks bad." I laughed when I read that, not because it was funny, but because the phrase was so cowardly. It looks bad, as if the problem were lighting, as if a better angle might make betrayal into an unfortunate misunderstanding. I did not answer right away. Instead, I made coffee and wrote down what I knew. That became my anchor. When someone lies to you for long enough, they train you to distrust your own perception. Writing facts down is a way of returning your mind to yourself. I wrote the date, the time, what I saw, what was said, what proof existed, what belonged to me, what decisions had to be made today, and what could wait. The list was not pretty, but it was solid. The first list was practical. The second list was harder. That one was called Things I Stopped Saying. I wrote down every sentence I had swallowed because I did not want to sound insecure. Why did you turn your phone over? Why did you stop calling me on your lunch break? Why do you get irritated when I ask where you are but expect me to explain every change in my mood? The list kept going until my hand hurt. I had mistaken silence for maturity. I had believed that being easy to love meant being easy to lie to. I had trained myself to accept less information so I would not seem controlling, even while someone else used my restraint as cover. That realization made me angrier than the discovery itself because betrayal had not only stolen the relationship, it had recruited my best qualities against me. My patience became their hiding place. My trust became their schedule. My desire to be fair became the reason I kept giving unfairness another chance. I called my closest friend after staring at the list for almost an hour. I expected myself to sound composed. Instead, the second she answered, my voice folded. I found out, I said. She did not ask me to prove it. She did not ask whether I was sure. She said, "Where are you?" That question was the first safe thing I had heard in days. When she arrived, she brought a tote bag, paper towels, and the kind of face people make when they are trying not to cry until you do. Handed her the list because I did not trust myself to say it all out loud. She read every line slowly, no performance, no interruptions. Then she said, "We are making copies of the proof and then you are eating something." It was such a small instruction, but I obeyed because heartbreak makes simple tasks feel like advanced math. We photographed documents, saved screenshots, emailed files to a new folder, changed passwords, logged out devices, checked accounts I had not thought about in months. With every practical step, I felt a little less like someone standing in the wreckage and a little more like someone putting up caution tape. Not healed, just no longer unprotected. Later that afternoon, I finally listened to one voicemail. Marcus's voice came through soft and wrecked. "Please do not let this be how we end." I pressed pause. There it was again, the focus on the ending, not the lying, not the choices. Not the version of me who had been living without the information I needed to consent to my own life, just the fear of consequences. I deleted the voicemail before the apology could ask me to do work it had not earned. That night, sleep came in pieces. I woke at 1:14, then 2:40, then 4:03. Each time, my body seemed to remember before my mind did. For 3 merciful seconds, I would not know, then the truth would arrive and sit on my chest. By morning, I understood why people say betrayal is physical. My ribs hurt, my jaw hurt, even my hands felt tired. Still, the sun came up in the most offensive, normal way. Trash trucks moved down the street, someone laughed outside, a neighbor watered plants. The world did not pause just because mine had cracked open, so I moved with it. I showered, I put on clothes that did not smell like yesterday. I took the folder of proof and placed it in my bag. And I began the ugly administrative part of heartbreak. If there was a lease, I called the leasing office. If there were shared accounts, I called the bank. If there were family plans, I sent short messages. If there were wedding vendors, trips, subscriptions, emergency contacts, shared passwords, or hidden obligations, I handled them one at a time. No one tells you how much paperwork a broken future leaves behind. Every cancellation felt like a tiny funeral, a reservation, a playlist. A saved address, a name under emergency contact, a note in a calendar for something I had once looked forward to. Each thing asked the same question, "Are you sure?" And each time I had to answer yes, not because I felt brave every time, because I knew the cost of saying no. By noon, the story had already started trying to soften itself. Marcus sent another message saying we should not let one terrible moment destroy everything. One terrible moment, that phrase made me put the phone face down. People love compressing their betrayals into moments once they are caught. A moment sounds small, a moment sounds human, a moment can be forgiven over dinner if everyone is tired enough. But what I had found was not a moment. It was a pattern, it was planning. It was the repeated decision to let me live inside a version of reality that had been edited for someone else's convenience. The confrontation became unavoidable at my mother's birthday dinner where I played the recording after Liana toasted family loyalty. I did not go there to perform pain. I went because there were practical pieces to settle and because the lie had stepped into shared space where silence would only protect the person who made it. The air in that room felt too clean, too bright. Betrayal should happen in weather I thought. It should come with thunder or at least dim lights. Instead, everything was fluorescent and ordinary. Marcus tried to control the opening. They used the voice I knew well, low, reasonable, wounded enough to invite sympathy. "Can we not do this here? You brought it here," I said. That sentence landed harder than I expected. For so long, I had treated privacy as kindness. I had hidden arguments, softened stories, covered embarrassment, and protected the image of a relationship that was not protecting me. I was done making my silence into someone else's reputation, so I said what happened clearly, without extra cruelty, without shaking details into something bigger than they were. The truth did not need decoration. I named my sister Liana. I named a voicemail recording of the open call, complete with names, dates, and my sister joking about my anniversary gift. I named the promise that had been broken. There's a special kind of stillness that fills a room when people realize the person they expected to cry has brought facts instead. Marcus tried to interrupt twice. The second time, I held up one hand. "You had time to talk before I found out," I said. "This is my time to finish." A month earlier, I would not have recognized that person as myself. Maybe that is the one mercy of betrayal. It can introduce you to the version of yourself who survives it. After the public part came the private wreckage. I had to divide objects that used to feel harmless. Mugs, chargers, jackets, documents, photos. The ordinary inventory of a shared life suddenly became evidence that I had believed in something. I found receipts in drawers, old cards, a movie ticket from a night I remembered as perfect. I held it for too long, then threw it away. Not every memory was a lie. That was another painful truth. Some moments had been real when they happened. Some laughter had been genuine, some comfort had comforted me. Betrayal did not erase all of it. It poisoned the timeline around it and forced me to sort through the wreckage with bare hands. That was why healing felt slow. Friends wanted anger because anger is easier to support. They could say, "Forget them, you deserve better," and mean it. I appreciated that, but grief is more complicated. I missed the person I thought I had. I missed the future I had rehearsed. I miss being someone who did not know what I now knew. At night, I would remember a small tender thing and then remember where the lie had been hiding beside it. The contrast made me nauseous. I started therapy because I got tired of pretending strength meant not needing help. The first session, I said I felt stupid. My therapist asked, for trusting someone you loved? I did not answer because I knew the trap in the question. I had been blaming myself for failing to detect a deception designed specifically to avoid detection. That was not stupidity, that was being targeted by someone who knew my soft places. Once I accepted that, the shame began to loosen. Marcus did not disappear cleanly, people like that rarely do. They circled back with new tones depending on what did not work. First came apology, then defensiveness, then nostalgia, then anger that I was being cold. Then another apology, longer this time, full of childhood wounds and stress and loneliness and all the reasons I was supposed to see betrayal as a symptom instead of a choice. I read some of it, not all. Closure is sometimes just deciding you have enough information. The hardest message came 2 weeks later. It said, I never stopped loving you. I stared at that sentence until it blurred. Maybe it was true in whatever way selfish people define love. Maybe they had loved me as comfort, as home base, as the person waiting in the light while they walked through shadows they chose. But love that requires my ignorance is not love I can live inside. I wrote back one sentence. You loved what my trust allowed you to get away with. Then I blocked the number. The practical consequences kept unfolding after that. Accounts had to be separated, plans canceled, mutual friends informed just enough to stop gossip from writing the story for us. Some people surprised me. Friend I expected to choose comfort called and said, I do not need details, I believe you. I cried after that call because belief feels different when you have been living under a ceiling of doubt. Other people disappointed me exactly as predicted. They asked whether there were two sides. They said relationships are complicated. They asked if I was sure I wanted to throw everything away. I learned to answer calmly. I am not throwing it away. I am refusing to keep carrying what someone else broke. That sentence became useful. I used it with friends, with family, with myself, because the temptation to go back did not vanish all at once. It came in soft disguises, a familiar song, a lonely Sunday morning, the habit of reaching for my phone when something funny happened, the empty side of the bed looking less like peace and more like failure. On those days, I returned to the facts. I remembered Liana laughing in the background after Marcus said I would never find out. I remembered a voicemail recording of the open call, complete with names, dates, and my sister joking about my anniversary gift. I remembered the way my body knew before my heart was ready, and I stayed gone. There was one last conversation weeks later, the kind people call closure because they want a clean label for something messy. Marcus asked to meet in a quiet cafe across town. I almost refused. Then I realized I was not afraid of the conversation anymore. I was only tired of imagining it. I chose the table near the window so I could leave easily. When Marcus walked in, I felt the old pull for half a second. The face was familiar, the shoulders, the walk, the person my nervous system had once recognized as home. Then I remembered that homes can have locked rooms. They sat down carefully, like sudden movements might make me disappear. Thank you for coming, they said. I nodded once. There was a time when I would have filled the silence to save us both from discomfort. I would have asked if they were eating, sleeping, managing. I would have taken care of the person who had injured me because care was the language I spoke best. This time I let the silence do its job. Marcus started with apology. Some of it sounded real, some of it sounded practiced. I did not interrupt either version. They said they had been selfish. They said they had been confused. They said they never wanted to hurt me. That was where I finally spoke. You were willing to risk hurting me as long as you could avoid seeing it happen. Their eyes dropped. That is different from not wanting to hurt me. The cafe noise moved around us, cups, chairs, a blender behind the counter, the ordinary world again, refusing to be dramatic just because something important was ending. I miss you, they said. I miss who I was before I knew, I answered. That was the most honest sentence I had said yet. They asked whether there was any path back. Not immediately, they said, not without work, but someday. I looked at the person across from me and tried to imagine it. The checking, the wondering, the rebuilding of trust, one careful plank at a time while the memory of the fall stayed underneath. Could some people do that? Probably. Could I? Not with this person, not without making my whole life into a monitoring system. No, I said. The word was small. It did not need to be bigger. They cried then, quietly. I did not hate them in that moment, and that surprised me. Hate would have been simpler. What I felt was sadness with a locked door in it. I hope you get better, I said. They looked up quickly, maybe hearing hope where I meant boundary, but not with me. After I left the cafe, I walked for almost an hour. I did not call anyone. I did not play music. I just let the city move around me while my body learned that the conversation I had feared was behind me. At evening, I opened the box where I had put the things I was not ready to sort. Photos, notes, receipts, a small gift from a random good day. I expected to cry over all of it. Instead, I sorted it into 3 piles. Keep because it belongs to my life. Throw away because it belongs to the lie. Wait because I am human. The wait pile was the biggest at first. I let that be okay. Healing got easier when I stopped demanding immediate purity from myself. I could miss someone and still know they were unsafe. I could remember a good morning and still refuse to return to a bad pattern. I could feel love leaving slowly without chasing it down the street. Weeks turned into months. I built new habits on purpose. Saturday mornings became mine. I tried a different grocery store so I would not keep passing the aisle where we used to argue about cereal. I rearranged furniture. I bought sheets in a color no one else had chosen. I learned which friends could sit with the truth and which ones only liked me when I made pain convenient. The first time I laughed without remembering to be sad afterward, I felt guilty. Then I felt grateful. Recovery was not a grand transformation. It was 1,000 tiny returns, eating dinner at the table instead of standing over the sink, sleeping through a night, deleting old message threads, making a plan for next summer without leaving space for someone who had forfeited the right to be assumed. The biggest return was learning to trust my own discomfort again. For months, discomfort had been treated like a flaw in me. If I noticed distance, I was anxious. If I noticed secrecy, I was suspicious. If I noticed inconsistency, I was making problems. Every instinct had been cross-examined until I stopped bringing it to the surface, so I practiced with small things. If a conversation felt wrong, I did not laugh it away. If someone gave an answer that did not answer the question, I asked again. If my body tightened around a person, I paid attention before I explained it into silence. That did not mean I became cynical. I did not want suspicion to become my new home, but I refused to confuse openness with blindness ever again. One evening, my friend asked whether I thought I would love someone again. We were sitting on my floor eating takeout from containers because the dining table was covered in papers I still had not filed. I thought about lying and giving the brave answer. I think so, I said, but next time I want love that does not punish me for noticing things. She nodded like that was enough, and it was. I did not need to become fearless. Fearless people can still walk into fires. I needed to become loyal to myself, even when my voice shook, even when leaving hurt, even when staying would have been easier to explain. That loyalty became the line I measured everything against. One afternoon, I found an old photo of us while searching for a tax document. I stared at it longer than I meant to. We looked happy. Maybe we were in that second. I did not delete it immediately. I put it in the weight pile, then made tea, then came back 20 minutes later and deleted it without ceremony. That was how I knew I was changing, not because nothing hurt, because hurt no longer gave instructions. 3 months later, I saw myself differently in a store window. That sounds dramatic, but it was ordinary. I was walking home with groceries, hair messy from the wind, one bag cutting into my hand. I glanced sideways and saw a person who looked tired but not broken. For the first time, I did not measure my reflection against whether someone had chosen me. I had chosen me, and the decision was starting to show. I filed for divorce, blocked Liana, and told my parents they could have access to my life or excuses for hers, not both. People ask what the final straw was, but the truth is that final straws are usually only final because every quiet straw before them was ignored. The canceled flight, the hotel photo, the open phone line, the office introduction. The hidden album, the broken rule, the deleted pictures, the locked drawer, the restaurant table. Each one was just the moment the truth stopped cooperating with the lie. I do not romanticize pain now. I do not call betrayal a blessing. I would rather have been loved honestly than strengthened by humiliation. But I am proud of what I did after. I did not beg to be picked by someone who had already chosen secrecy. I did not audition for respect. I did not let the fear of starting over convince me to stay inside a story that made me smaller. The life I have now is quieter than the one I imagined. It has fewer dramatic promises and more locked doors that belong only to me. It has friends who do not make me guess, mornings that begin without checking another person's mood, and a kind of peace I used to mistake for boredom. Sometimes I still get angry, sometimes I still grieve. Healing did not make me above any of that. It just gave me somewhere safe to feel it, and when I think about Marcus, I do not wonder whether they regret losing me. That question belongs to them. The question that belongs to me is simpler. What did I save when I finally stopped trying to save us? The answer is my own life, and I am never handing that back.